I think you could probably come away from these sessions with lots of different thoughts and ideas to take back to both thinking around AI and assessment, but also more broadly kind of learning and assessment generally.
Hello and welcome to the Test Community Network. I hope you're all safe and well. My name is Tim Burnett. Welcome to this space. We're going to be talking with Dr. Simon Chard and Rosie Applin about the upcoming Assessment Horizons Conference, which is taking place in April. Lots of time left, or a little bit of time left for you to get your early bird registration in. 2 days of excellent presentations and workshops. I'm really excited because I'm going to be going for the first time. It's the third year that they've had the conference, and 2 really excellent keynotes as well. And this is where we kind of delve into, we talk about the keynotes in terms of the learning to failure side of things, and learning about learner engagement and the richness there. And I kind of put it to Rosie and Simon as we kind of explore just the kind of the opportunities for AI to interfere or enhance both of those opportunities. I think one thing I'm conscious of is as people move towards the idea of let's get AI to do the feedback, what are we losing from that? Because we're going to gain a lot, but we're going to lose some stuff as well. We need to be conscious of that. Also coming up later on in the year is the 51st IAEA conference, which is about educational measurement conference, and that's going to be taking place in Toronto. And I got in a conversation with Dan Koenig from the EQAO, which is the host organization for that conference, and I've been talking to him about the event, what he's expecting, the voice in the room, and some of the exciting stuff that's going to take place. I've got a little clip to play for you here now.
And we know AI is so prominent. We want to bring the big thinkers, those global thought leaders, into the room to have that discussion as well. What are they learning from it? What are some of the advantages that they've seen in the efficiencies? And what were the process in the development of a framework that actually made real good sense for proper implementation?
So if you want to see more of that conversation, that presentation, that interview with Dan, if you head over to the Test Community Network, if you have a look on the top here, we've got a blog item that's come up that I've added, and in there you've got all the details about the conference, about the conference conversation that I had with Dan. You've got the full interview, so you can learn more about the conference and the expectations of that, and there are some of the key dates and information on there. Of course, while you're there, why not stop and have a look at the amazing content that's on the Test Community Network. I had a really great conversation with someone this morning, just absolutely stunned how much amazing stuff there is on there. So on to my conversation now with Rosie and Simon. Here's me in conversation with Rosie and Simon. There we go. Can you well?
Hello. Yes.
Hi. Yes, very good. Very good.
Both very well. Thank you.
Excellent. So we're talking about the Assessment Horizons Conference. Before we start just talking about the content, Rosie, do you want to give us a kind of an insight as to when it is, where it's going to be, who's going to be coming? Just give us the practical stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the third year of our annual Assessment Horizons Conference. And as always, it's taking place in Cambridge and online. So we host it here at our Triangle Building. This year it'll be on the 23rd and 24th of April, which is a Thursday and Friday. We decided to move it towards the end of the week just to accommodate some people who have actually travelled internationally to be here with us for the conference. And they said they'd like a bit more extra time to explore Cambridge. So we've just bolted that on at the end so they can perhaps stay on into the weekend if they wanted to do that. And yeah, we've got a whole selection of different speakers, both in person and for those joining us online, a variety of workshops, keynotes, breakout presentation sessions, and even some member case studies this year from some of our members based internationally.
Excellent. And I noticed when I was looking at the program for the online users, with the workshops, there's provision for them as well, isn't it? It's not just going to be sat there watching.
That's right. Which doesn't really work. We haven't really found that it works well having a practical workshop session both in person and online at the same time. So we've decided to offer a slightly different complementary offer for those joining us online, and then we'll have our in-person sessions for those of us who want to join us in person as well. So yeah, we think we've got something for everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's fantastic because obviously people are going to be from international perspectives, they won't be able to get over for whatever reasons. It's expensive sometimes, isn't it? So they've got plenty of options, but you can't beat that in person, though, can you? It's just part of the process.
That's right, and that's what people tell us. Is it's really one of the key things that people really get out of this conference is the ability to connect with each other and to really feel part of a community, particularly for people who are working in sometimes quite sort of lone wolf type roles in assessment organizations. So, for example, people working in professional institutes or awarding organisations, smaller awarding organisations, but as well as those who are coming from bigger organisations. And actually sharing those insights across different sectors is really beneficial for people. So, we have people coming from higher education, vocational education, schools, awarding organisations, and right across the spectrum of people involved in assessment and testing, really.
Perfect, a great broad mix. Now, I was looking at the program. So for you've got the keynotes set up, and it's two really quite interesting keynotes there, because your Anastasiya is going to be talking about feedback and some of the emotions that are triggered from there, and the value that students get from engagement, good, rich, engaging feedback. And then you've got Manu who's going to be talking more about the idea of learning from failure. And what with my kind of AI brain on, which is why my brain isn't all the time at the moment. I was kind of intrigued partly by your kind of reasons and your choice and your selections, why you thought these were two quite kind of important topics, but also just that idea that I suppose the trend at the moment is that people are moving more towards immediate feedback and AI-driven feedback, and thinking that's hugely valuable. But there's a risk, isn't there, that if you take the human out of that process, it can interfere with that. And then with the learning through failure idea, actually AI potentially creates a great space to do that, doesn't it? To kind of save. So what was your kind of thinking? What was your narrative? Where were you going with these? And where do you see that kind of push and pull?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So we thought both these sessions were really timely, as you say, in light of some of the discussions around AI learning and assessment, and particularly because they are focused on human intelligence and human behaviour that's at the heart of learning and feedback. So Anastasiya Lipnevich, who's joining us from New York, her work is on the emotional response of learners to feedback, which provides crucial human behavioural insights and regulation strategies, actually emotional regulation strategies, for ensuring that feedback is productive and helpful for learners. So on the kind of AI side of things, I think for people who are designing AI feedback systems, or indeed for anyone involved in designing and delivering feedback, some of those insights will be absolutely crucial in terms of how we respond emotionally to feedback and how that can be improved in terms of how valuable that feedback is. And then in terms of Manu's session, so his work is all about the idea that building failure into learning design can become a catalyst for greater understanding amongst learners. And so when you think about some of the risks people are talking about with AI use impacting cognitive load, you can see how productive failure would act as a sort of counter to this, because the mental challenge involved in overcoming failure enhances deep learning rather than weakening the brain's ability to do it. Which, I mean, that's just one perspective. There's so many reasons why learning about productive failure and the kind of the science behind feedback and how students interpret it are incredibly valuable for anybody working in assessment. So I think you could probably come away from these sessions with lots of different thoughts and ideas to take back to both thinking around AI and assessment, but also more broadly kind of learning and assessment generally.
Yeah, and I think that's the purpose of a keynote, really, isn't it? Is to get your brain thinking, and to really trigger your thoughts as part of that process. You're not necessarily looking for the answers to everything, because you've got to apply it to your own context. What do you think, Simon? Do you in terms of these kind of topics, you think there's something huge and powerful and timely there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think in terms of particularly the emotional response to feedback. So the idea of one of the principles of responsive teaching is making sure that the student, the learner, is receptive to feedback as it's coming to them. And Anastasia's talk is really getting to the heart of the conditions that you need to set up as an educationalist, as an assessor, to make it as effective as possible. So I think that will have lots of practical implications for people who go to the conference and listen to them. And I think one of the things that or one of the quotations that I thought about in this space is that if you have an emotional response to feedback, then the learning will almost certainly stop. So it's many ways from a student's perspective, it's the lens in which they're receiving the feedback that's actually really important for this. So if you've got a kind of a growth mindset, that even if you see a result that isn't quite meeting your expectations in terms of the score or the grade or however you receive that feedback, if you have that sense of it's a progress-focused approach to your learning, then that can actually help them receive the feedback and the subsequent assessments in a positive way, in the sense that they understand that it's shaping their minds and their development going forward.
Yeah, it's an essential part of it, isn't it? I mean, I'm excited to hear those presentations. I think it could be great, and some of the great content in there as well. Simon, you're doing some presentations yourself, or you're doing some research. Do you want to tell us about your research? And it's about literacy, isn't it? AI literacy.
Well,
assessment literacy. Sorry.
Assessment literacy, but for a really interesting subgroup, if you like, within the community of a school system. So there's been lots of work on assessment literacy of teachers, and little bits of work on assessment literacy of students, like we've just talked about, for example, how they receive feedback and the sense of growth mindset and how that contributes to their learning and so on. But this third group is maybe one that's a little bit under-considered in the research literature, something that we did a survey on the idea of parental assessment literacy. Because we know, for example, that schools are communicating or engaging parents with things like school reports and maybe assessment outcomes. So that there was a sense that parents who want to be engaged in their learners' learning journey, their children's learning journey, need to understand that communication, that way, and engage with it in the way that perhaps the schools are hoping that the parents will. So one of the research projects that I've just recently completed, working with a colleague in Greece, Rania Ventista, is surveying parents from across the English system and across the Greek system, to look at a number of different questions on their assessment literacy. How literate do they think they are? What things do they need to know in the future? But also comparing the two systems in terms of their perceptions about the school system and how schools communicate with them in terms of assessment. So what we found was actually quite significant differences between the two systems, specifically connected to their trust in the assessment of their school and how that actually connects to what the parents do in their day-to-day lives to either generate their own knowledge and learn about assessment, or indeed how they react in terms of things like tutoring behaviors and so on. So their level of trust in the assessment system within the school seems to have that direct correlation with how they act. So there's definitely some really interesting comparisons. And we think in terms of where the differences lie is that the Greek system, for example, is very centralized, but it has a lot of teacher-based assessment. Yeah. So it could be as a bit of a black box from the parents' perspective. They don't quite know where these assessment outcomes and results for their children are coming from. Whereas in the English system, the parents have well-rehearsed understanding of GCSEs, A-levels, and the overall assessment system, because it's more externally assessed. And that actually has a different influence on how much they trust those systems in general in the school.
Okay, so quite different then, because I know there's been some research recently in terms of looking at other systems, and there's countries which are migrating towards from a centralized approach or sample-based approach to a very similar system to ours, and then there's countries like ours who are kind of moving back the other way. How much? So why Greece, for instance? Why was Greece picked? Just out of interest.
Well, to aid the comparison, really, because so to compare England and Greece, Greece, as I say, has a very centralized system. So government funded. The school system is very state controlled. Whereas obviously in England, we've got a little bit more autonomy in terms of private schooling, but also things related to the academies and the kind of flexibility, if you like, within the curriculum. So they were very different to each other for that reason. But also that idea of the internalized assessment system, which is more informal and open to interpretation within Greece compared to England, which is obviously a little bit more structured in terms of the external assessments, at least. So there were two instant points of comparison that I think could explain some of the results that we found. So we tried to find two systems that were quite different to each other for that reason.
Okay. So a good polar kind of opposite view on that. That's right. It's fascinating. And do you think, in terms of the parents, I suppose we go through we go through the process here, don't we? And I suppose we know it, and it's not changed that much. Have they seen much change? The parents, is it changed much for the parents since they were kind of being assessed?
Yeah, that was one of the questions we asked about, really, is how familiar do they feel with the system as it is now, particularly in relation to their child's learning, and that was one of the key differences we found. Is that sense of, as I mentioned before, the black box. They know assessment's happening, and data, if you like, is coming from the school in relation to their child, but they don't quite know where that's come from, how regular it's happened. They just get something maybe at the end of a semester or a term in their language. So there's limitations there. Whereas in England, I think it's a bit more well rehearsed, a bit more stable, school to school. So that stability, I think, does contribute to the trust ratings as well that we found in the research.
And do you think is there any kind of major kind of recommendations on change, or is it just a question of let's do a comparison, or do you think there's been some huge value that both countries can take away?
Yeah, by the end of the presentation, we'll be giving a few. Obviously, don't want to give
you don't want to share them now. Yeah.
Yeah. So watch this space. But the recommendations will centre around how school leaders, in particular, would be able to frame their development of their parents, both in terms of any kind of, I call it inverted commas, professional development, but essentially school system development, how they communicate with the parents about where the data's come from, what kind of language to use, how to get parents more, say, literate in that sense, and the different formats of that delivery, but also in terms of how it contributes to the overall assessment culture of the school as well. So those will be a few of the recommendations that we reveal in the paper itself.
Excellent. So you're not going to give away any secrets now. We've got to come along.
Yeah, of course.
And just in terms of then the wider work that you do, because obviously, this conference isn't the only thing that you do in this space. You've got the whole assessment network. What do you want to walk me through? What else is going on in Cambridge? What other kind of research is going on? What other kind of opportunities are there really for people to kind of play? Because I know you're very much about helping to educate professionals within the industry, aren't you? You want to share your knowledge. What's happening in your space at the moment?
Well, one of the things to note that's really exciting about the current conference, Assessment Horizons, is that we've taken responses for what people are really concerned about when it comes to what they need to know about in the future when it comes to assessment literacy or assessment related topics. So there were a few things that came out really strongly in that particular survey. Of about 160 people or so responded to that. And so obviously one of the things is the idea of AI and more support on assessment in relation to that, how to integrate it with almost the different stages of the assessment process. So in terms of the design of the assessments all the way through to marking and so on.
Yeah.
But also the idea of the ethics and fairness in relation to AI assessment as well. So that will come in pretty strongly in the conference as well, with many of the workshops that we have as well. So there's a couple of workshops going on at the conference specific to those sorts of topics, authentic assessment in AI and so on as well. A lot of the thinking is around this sense of ensuring integrity, particularly in digital formats as well. Making assessments inclusive and accessible. So there'll be this sense of moving from kind of rote learning or kind of the traditional models to more authentic assessment designs as well. So there are many of the topics that we'll be covering at the conference itself. But in terms of the kind of the latest research, I think one of the things that a lot of people are grappling with at the moment is this idea of we're all doing our own kind of needs analysis from our own professional perspective of what elements of traditional learning, as we currently understand it to be, and the sort of science of learning that underpins it. Which bits are we maintaining value in, or should we maintain value in, and which bits are where innovation is best placed? And AI, I think, is really interesting because it challenges almost every single part of our learning models as we currently understand them.
Yeah.
So there was some research that was done recently at Cambridge University Press and assessment with Microsoft that actually found that what we would consider to be one of those activities that you might on the face of it think might be removed with digital movements and so on, the idea of writing notes on paper.
Yeah.
That learning activity is actually remains critical for students' reading comprehension and retention later on. So if we value those skills, reading comprehension, as I'm sure all of us would, research is coming out pretty strong that that method of writing notes and so on should be maintained in the educational system somehow. So it's those sorts of potentially surprising results or things that you might think are just nice to have rather than essential, and that actually are things that we should be maintaining and retaining. So it's interesting that there are, as we just probe those different elements of the educational system, that there are sort of things that we can definitely innovate in and some things that we should keep.
Excellent. Have you seen the interview with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, where he talks about his note taking? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. No.
OpenAI. So he CEO OpenAI, ChatGPT, all that kind of thing, and he keeps a notebook with him, or a little notebook about that big, and he writes everything. He says he writes everything down. It's an important part of his process. And what he does is he has such a little one that he rips them out, almost like post-it note size, and sticks them out, and then he can photograph them and memorize them, and then kind of trick them. But he sees it as being an absolute essential kind of part of that process. But I think we're at the stage where everything is up for disruption, isn't it? The whole our whole life, our whole learning, every single stage of it.
And that anecdote from Sam there kind of gives away the point that we're dealing with our own working memories. We can only hold, say, 5 to 7 things in our mind at any one period of time. So if it's a fleeting thought and it's a good idea, he needs to put it somewhere so he can commit it to long-term memory or return to it at some point. So that makes sense, doesn't it? Now, whether it's on a phone or you speak into it, that idea of ideas capture will always remain in education, in general practice. It's just the format may change from a notepad to something else.
I think it's all important stuff, isn't it, that we need to look at. I'd be fascinated to hear that. Is that research coming out at the conference? Is that something that's going to be later on in the year?
That's already been released, actually.
Is it? Excellent.
You can find out more about that on Cambridge.org, the findings from that particular research report.
I will dig that out. If you send me the link after, I'll put that in the show notes for people can go to. Excellent. So exciting then. So we've got the conference coming up. And when's the closing of the early bird?
Closing of the early bird is the 27th of February. So definitely worth checking that out if you're planning to join us either in person or online, because you can save around £50 on your ticket price if you book now. So absolutely worth checking that out.
Yeah, and we'll be able to hear all those amazing keynotes and the insights that Simon won't share here. Needs research, but no, I think some really good stuff. And looking at the program, it's a really fascinating program. So
it's really packed this year. Actually, we've managed to pack quite a lot in. So we're quite excited to share all, because we've got a huge variety of different speakers joining us. Some of whom are joining us from all over the world, actually. So it's really international as well this year. So we're excited to share it with people.
Excellent. Everyone descending on Cambridge. That's good.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you in Cambridge. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Where am I? There we go. Right. Thank you very much. That was fascinating. Really. I am really excited for the event, and I think if you're able to be in Cambridge on the 23rd and 24th of April, then that is a place where you should be. I think it's going to be great for the assessment community. But also, as Rosie mentioned, there is the online option as well. So if you can't be there, then it's well worth signing up to that. And I don't think it's much. It's not, the grand scheme of things, there are some conferences at the moment which, honestly, I think they're getting silly in terms of price. This one is a reasonable one, so please do get along. Right, well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. As ever, anything you've seen on here you want to take away, then go to the TES Community Network. You can subscribe for free and receive a nice little email through every week, which has really kind of all the stuff really you've missed in the social media networks. And if you enjoy this, if you like what I do, if you find it helps, and if people do, then please do reach out, leave me a comment in the platform, or drop me a note. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, you take care, and I will see you soon. Thank you very much.